Hate is not an emotion. It is a mechanism. A person becomes a category, and by then it is just logistics. The Holocaust did not start with a gas chamber. It started with laws and propaganda that made Jews into something less than human, where the machine actually does its work. That machine only runs if we feed it, because every genocide in history was operated by ordinary people who accepted a category. When I was 9 years old, a restaurant owner in Mississippi looked at a dark-skinned boy with jet black curly hair, told the man I was traveling with, "You and your son are welcome here, but he is not. He's got to eat in the back." I ate my supper on the back steps. Now hold on to that for a moment here. Hold on to this number. 6 million. That's how many Jews, men, women, and children, were murdered in the Holocaust. The road from my back steps to that number is shorter than you think. Today I'll show you how hatred actually works. The left's answer, the right's answer, and the common sense plan that nobody is talking about. Welcome, patriots, to this edition of Common Sense for America. I'm Bruce Rutherford, your host and commentator, coming to you from the beautiful Westwood Golf Club in Houston, Texas. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Now, let's get into this. Here is the progressive argument, and I want you to hear it fully. They say hate is not just a feeling in one bad heart. It is taught, organized. The lynchings of the Jim Crow South started with decades of speech and cartoons and sermons that painted a whole race as a threat. The Holocaust did not start with a gas chamber. It started with laws and propaganda that made Jews into something less than human. So the left says that they must treat hate as a specific danger, track it, teach against it, punish the crimes it produces, and take the dehumanizing speech seriously before it becomes a body count, to censor it. And here's the thing, they're not entirely wrong about that. History backs them on where this starts. Now here's the conservative argument. Hate lives in the human heart, and no government agency has ever regulated a human heart. Hand the state the power to define hate speech, and you hand it to whoever wins the next election. And the definition always grows. Much of what gets called hate today is simply disagreement about the border, about crime, about our schools. Censorship does not kill hatred. It drives it underground, where it festers and recruits. The right says that the cure is character, family, faith, and the open contest of ideas, where a bad argument gets beaten in public. And here's the thing, they're not entirely wrong either. A government strong enough to police your speech today is strong enough to police mine tomorrow on a completely different issue. But here's the real problem, and neither side is naming it. Hate is not an emotion. It is a mechanism. Step 1, a motive, revenge, fear, jealousy. Step 2, dehumanization. A person becomes a category. Step 3, elimination. And by then, it is just logistics. The left is fighting step 3 with laws. The right is defending liberty at step 1. But nobody is standing guard at step 2, where the machine actually does its work, where the machine actually gets its power. So the real question is not how we punish hate after the fact. It is how we break the machine at step 2. Now, does that make any sense to you? Some years back, I did an episode called The Anatomy of Hate, and I gave you the 4 motives. Revenge. Someone harmed you and you hate them for it. Fear. The slave owners of the Old South lived in terror and fear of their slaves revolting and killing them. And so they held up that fear led them to hate the people they held in chains. And they learned to hate for that reason. Then there's conscience. A person with a good conscience could not survive what the slave owners were doing to their slaves unless they taught themselves to hate their victims. Their conscience demanded some sort of reconciliation of the issues. Jealousy. I believe much of the world's oldest hatred, the hatred of the Jews, is resentment of the Jewish success, dressed up as a grievance. The motive comes first. Then comes the step that nobody wants to watch or talk about. On January 20, 1942, 15 senior officials of Nazi Germany met in a villa outside Berlin. 8 of them were trained lawyers, and in roughly 90 minutes, they organized the murder of a whole people. Here is what should keep you up at night. Not one of them debated whether what they were doing was right or wrong. They debated definitions. Who counts as a Jew? What happens to the Jew's property? What should be done about mixed marriages? The right or wrong was already settled because step 2 was already complete. That was the dehumanization of the Jews. After that, the killing became engineering. The crematoria at Auschwitz, Birkenau, were designed to dispose of 4,416 human beings a day. Prisoner testimony says that the real number reached 8,000. Is it any wonder that survivors later spent their lives warning us of this? So what actually breaks the machine? That's contact. In 1948, President Truman ordered the American military to be desegregated. Men who had been taught to hate each other suddenly shared foxholes and came home changed men. By 1954, the last segregated unit was gone. I lived a small version of that. My mother hired a black maid named Millie Hawthorne, and to me, she was like a second mother. Never dawned on me that her skin color didn't make a bit of difference to me. Later, my Little League team was integrated. My school was integrated when I was 12. Racial discrimination never made any sense to me, ever. Those kids were never a category. They were never dehumanized. They had names. Now, some of you might be thinking, people are all just prejudiced. They always will be. Now, I hear you. No person is completely without prejudice, and that includes me. But there is a world of difference between a prejudice your conscience checks and a machine that rewards it. You must check any prejudice with your conscience. In March of 1865, Abraham Lincoln stood before the country that had buried more than 600,000 of its sons. And he refused to feed the machine. He led the nation forward, and I quote, with malice toward none and charity for all. He had every motive history could supply: revenge, fear, grief. He declined step 1, the motive part, on behalf of an entire nation. That is what leadership against the mechanism looks like. So here's the common sense solution. The false choice is to censor speech or do nothing. That's a false choice. Common sense says the real battlefield is dehumanization. And every one of us is standing on that battlefield. The principle is simple. Hatred cannot survive the individual person. It needs to be dehumanized and reduced to a category. So refuse the category. When anyone, left or right, online or on television, hands you a group to despise, the immigrants, the billionaires, the MAGA crowd, the Jews, stop and demand a name and a face. If the argument cannot survive being about one real person, it was never an argument in the first place. It was the machine warming up. Your assignment this week, your call to action this week, is to find someone from a group you have been taught to resent and have a real conversation with them. Share a meal if you can. I've eaten that meal from the wrong side of the door, and I can tell you it is very hard to hate a man whose name you know. Have you seen this work in your own life? So here's what you need to remember. Hate is not a feeling that happens to us. It is a three-step machine. That machine only runs if we feed it. This matters because every genocide in history was operated by ordinary people who accepted a category, a group of people dehumanized into a category, and then murdered them. Talk about this with your friends and family. Tell me in the comments, where do you see the machine running today? I want to hear from you. Now, next time, we're going to talk about the war with Iran and the question Washington will not answer. What does winning look like? Until then, may God bless you and yours, and God bless America.